Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be my 35-week pregnancy update. I am officially in month 9 of pregnancy now. I am 36 weeks today, but I'm going to be talking about week 35. And it happens to be one of the most difficult weeks of my pregnancy this far. Because if you follow me on Instagram, I posted on my story that I was actually in labor and delivery, or like the ER. I was in triage in labor and delivery from Monday until Wednesday early morning, so like Thursday. I got really sick. I thought it was the flu. I ended up getting really bad chills, a really high fever. I ended up throwing up, and then I continued to throw up every 10 minutes. I couldn't keep any food or liquid down for a good portion of, it started on Monday at around 8 o'clock is when I started to feel a really strong headache come on, and then I just felt like kind of queasy, and I just thought it would pass, so I took I ended up taking ibuprofen on accident. And no, you're not supposed to take ibuprofen, you're only supposed to take Tylenol. And I was just so out of it at that point that was the first thing I reached for, was ibuprofen. And so I took one of those and just thought that it was gonna pass, and it didn't. It ended up getting a lot worse, to the point where my nausea got so bad that I ended up throwing up, and then I got fever, chills, body aches, sweats. I got really dizzy and lightheaded. I couldn't keep fluid down. I just kept throwing up every 10-15 minutes for a good portion of the night. And then I ended up calling labor and delivery to see what they wanted me to do, if I just needed to write it out, or if they wanted me to come in to get monitored. And they said since my fever was above 100.4 and I was experiencing dizziness, that was protocol for me to come in to be seen. So I mustered up the energy. I don't know how I did, because I could barely even make it to the bathroom to throw up. I had zero energy at that point. And I actually drove myself to labor and delivery, and our hospital is actually pretty far from where we live. It's about a 30-minute drive. Mind you, this was at about 1:30 in the morning on Monday, so there was no traffic, obviously, but I just was driving to labor and delivery and kept reminding myself, like, I'm almost there, and just like taking deep breaths and moaning, because I was in so much pain and just so nauseous that was like the only relief I could get, was moaning my way through it while I was driving there. And so I eventually made it, and they put me into a triage room and hooked me up to monitors and everything, and her heart rate was actually pretty high because of my fever, because obviously when I'm hot, the baby's hot and she's in distress. So they were a little bit concerned about that, but they said as soon as I get my IV in with fluid and some Zolfran, that should bring her heart rate down. And so one of the nurses came in to give me my IV, and I have really, like, you can even see right now, like, my veins are really good veins. Like, I always had really good veins. I've never had a problem with needles. I pretty much watch the nurses do my IVs. Like, I have no problem with blood or anything. And the nurse that was doing my IV, mind you, I was dehydrated, so my veins were not the best, but they still were, they weren't bad. So she tried to put an IV in, and okay, so by the time she came in to give me my IV, it had already been about 45 minutes of me just sitting in the triage room crying, like hunched over the bed, just moaning my way. Like, I ended up taking the monitor off of me because I was in so much pain, because the triage bed is so upright. Like, she didn't even give me the option to recline it or anything, didn't show me how to do it. She just like shut the door behind her, left, and like never even came back for about 45 minutes or so. And I'm sitting there like, I didn't know what to do. She gave me a cup to put a urine sample, and she didn't even come back to collect that. I had to physically walk out and ask them if I needed to bring it to them, or if she was gonna come collect it. And all of the nurses that were sitting there were all on their phone, and I was so enraged at that point. And they were like, oh no, we'll come get it. And so like 15 minutes later, they finally came back in, got my urine sample and the nurse gave me my IV, but she put it in so painfully. Like, I'm not even kidding. I have a really high tolerance for pain, and she squirted blood everywhere. It was awful. It was the worst experience I've ever experienced with needles. And at that point I was screaming at her. I was like, take it out of me right now. I want to go home. Get me out of here. And she was like, do you want me to take it out? And I was like, yes, I want to leave. I want to go home. Like, I'm more miserable here than I was at home. Like, I need to get out of here. Please take this out of me. And she was like, okay. Well, she looked at the heart rate and she was like, well, the baby's heart rate is still too high. We physically can't let you go. And so I just rolled my eyes at her and just like laid down and let her finish. And then she eventually came back in with some Zolfran to put in my IV and a bag of fluids, and I was feeling a lot better at that point. And they were just monitoring me for about another hour after the fluids had seeped into my veins, and her heart rate eventually went down, which was great. And then they eventually sent me home, but they asked if I wanted a prescription of Zolfran to take home with me, and I actually declined that because in my first update, I think it was my 19-week pregnancy update, I explained that I got really sick. My husband and I both got really sick, and we had to go to the ER when I was like 8 weeks pregnant, I think, and that was the exact same feeling I was feeling this week. So I just thought it was gonna last 24 hours and then it would go away like it did last time. And I had a prescription of Zolfran from the previous time I was sick in my first trimester. I think I had like 5 pills left of Zolfran. So I declined the prescription because I figured that would be enough. And so I went home and it was like 3:30 in the morning. I was only in triage at this point for like 2.5, 3 hours, and then I was sent home. And so I was feeling pretty good at that point, not 100% better, but I was feeling well enough, and so I ended up falling asleep, excuse me, and then I woke up at like 5:30 in the morning and it was back in full force, and I was back on the toilet throwing up, fever, nausea, vomiting, all of it just came back again. And Adam had gotten up an hour later to get ready for work, and I looked at him and I was like, there's no way you can get out of work, because there was no way for me to take care of Baylee. Like, there was absolutely no way I could possibly take care of her that day feeling like that. I couldn't even get out of bed on my own. It was impossible. And he looked at me and he was like, I can try to get home early. And I just said, no, that's not gonna work. I'm sorry. Like, I need you to stay home. And that was like the last of our conversation. He got back in bed and I locked myself in our room that entire day, that entire night, and just tried to sleep. But I didn't really get much sleep. It was mostly like me laying down for 10 minutes, throwing up, laying down for 10 minutes, and then throwing up. I was throwing up every 10 minutes, and at this point I hadn't eaten anything since Monday evening. And at this point it was like Tuesday evening, and I still hadn't been able to keep liquids down or solid foods down. The Zolfran just kept coming up because I was throwing it up. I was throwing out my prenatals, my Tylenol, everything. Nothing would stay down. And so I ended up falling asleep that night and woke up the next day on Wednesday, and I actually felt a little bit better, and I felt like, okay, like this is the end of it. And I felt like I had enough energy to try and get something in my system, like some sort of toast. I think I had toast and jelly, and then a granola bar, and then I tried to make like mini corn dogs, and I think I had like 2 of them, and I felt sick to my stomach, so I stopped eating those. But that's about all I had Wednesday. And I was just cleaning the house because Adam and Baylee were downstairs all day Tuesday trying to stay away from me, and the house was a disaster when I came down on Wednesday, so I had to use all my energy to clean up the house and clean the kitchen because there was dishes just piled high, because I'm the person that like cleans in the house. So that's what I spent most of my day doing on Wednesday, and I think I overdid it. Because at 5:30, like on the dot on Wednesday, I felt awful, like even worse than I did Monday. And it came in a wave, and I felt like it was coming back. And this is when I start to give Baylee dinner, is around 5:30. And then I will put her in the bath and get her ready for bed. She goes to bed pretty early, and I didn't even have energy to give her dinner. Like I had to get her in her crib and get her down for bed so that I could go lay down, because I just felt like I was gonna vomit. And I felt so dizzy and so weak, because again, I didn't really have much in my system to sustain myself, to give me energy at this point. So I put her in the bath, and I went into our room and laid down, and I just heard her splashing and playing in the bathtub, and I didn't even have energy to go get her out and get her dressed to put her in her crib. And I kept saying to myself and praying and just saying, God, please give me the energy to put her to bed, because I just felt so awful at this point. And so it took me like 10 minutes to like muster up some energy, and I went to go as fast as I could. I took her out of the bath, barely dried her off. Her hair was still sopping wet. And I think I put her pajamas on backwards, and I just put her in her crib, and I told her I loved her, and I closed the door, and that was that. And I went down to lay down, and I got the worst chills. I was like hyperventilating in our bed, but it was really hot. Our room gets pretty hot this time of, or around 5:30 at night. We don't have air conditioning because we're pretty close to the beach, so our room gets really hot at that point, but I was freezing. So I was shivering in our bed with all the blankets I could find, and I had like a full set pajama set on, a fleece pajama set, and I was just in so much pain. And the baby was moving like so much at this point, so it was making it worse, making me more nauseous. But I felt good that she was, knowing that she was moving, so that was reassuring. But it felt so awful to feel her move. It just made me feel even worse. But I ended up taking my temperature, and it was 101.1, and then I wasn't even gonna allow myself to even try and go throughout the night to see if it was gonna get better or worse. I called labor and delivery right away and told them what I was feeling. They told me that I needed to come in to be monitored, because again, my fever was above 100.4. And I told her, I was like, I don't think I can drive myself this time. Like, I don't have any energy. I'm so dizzy. I'm so weak. I don't know how I'm gonna get there. And she just told me, like, you can either call an ambulance to come get you, ask a neighbor or something. And Adam was on his way home at this point from work, and I told him that I wasn't feeling well again, and to see if our baby monitor reached one of our neighbors' houses so that she could watch the baby monitor while Adam and I went to labor and delivery while Baylee was sleeping. And unfortunately, it didn't reach to her house. So, and she's like 2 houses down from me. But it didn't reach, so she offered to drive me to labor and delivery and stay there with me as long as it took, which was so sweet of her. I'm so grateful that she offered to do that so that Adam could stay home with Baylee, so we didn't have to wake her up. And this was about 6:30, so I didn't really waste any time. As soon as I felt like I was sick, like, I called, and I wanted to get more fluids and just make sure that there wasn't an infection or something going on that was more severe. So we ended up leaving around 6:30, and we got there, and they put me again in a triage room and hooked me up to the monitor. Her heart rate was really high again. They put an IV in again, but this time it didn't hurt. I had a really sweet nurse, and they checked my urine sample again, and it came back, and I was showing there was protein in my urine. I'm not sure why there was protein in my urine, because everything came back where I don't have preeclampsia or anything like that. So they never really explained it. They just said it was probably because I was dehydrated. When I gave her my urine sample, my urine was like almost red. It was not clear whatsoever. So it was very obvious that I was really dehydrated. But the doctor ended up coming in and telling me that the plan on what we were going to do, and he said that he was going to give me another 2 more bags of fluids, some electrolytes in my IV, and some more Zolfran, and then like 3 big horse pills of potassium. So I took all of that, and then he told me that he was going to wheel me into an actual labor and delivery room because there was a possibility that I could be staying overnight because her heart rate was still not very stable at this point. It was still pretty high. So I was willing to do whatever it took at that point just to feel better and to make sure that the baby was okay. And then a couple more hours went by and her heart rate had stabilized, and I was feeling almost 100% better at that point. So they offered to send me home, and I obviously accepted because I was dying to get home and to go to bed. I was really uncomfortable hooked up to all those monitors and the IV and everything. I couldn't sleep, so I really wanted to get home so I could get a good night's rest. So they offered to give me a prescription of Zolfran this time, and I did accept it. So we went down to the pharmacy after we got released and picked that up, and then we headed home, and I fell asleep instantly, and then the next morning I felt almost 100% better. I felt so much better than I had throughout the rest of the week, and I really felt like this time it had passed and it wasn't going to come back again. So I didn't even really need the Zolfran. I never ended up taking it, and I just tried to slowly introduce food back into my diet and made sure I was staying really well hydrated with Gatorade and water. And ever since then I feel pretty much 100% better. The only thing that I'm left with is like a really sore throat, I think, from all of the vomiting, and like my body's still really achy because of all of the vomiting and convulsing that my body was doing. So other than that, I feel great, and I'm so happy to be feeling better and out of the hospital. But other than that huge ordeal this week, we'll go ahead and get into the rest of the symptoms for my 35-week pregnancy update. And I've started to feel a lot of lightning crotch pain. And for those of you that have never experienced that or don't know what that is, it's like a sharp shooting pain up your vagina, and it's really uncomfortable. It only lasts for like a second and then it goes away. But I've experienced that this week. Sleep has gotten to be really hard lately because I've never been able to sleep in one position for very long. I'm constantly turning from side to side to try and get comfortable or change positions. And now that my belly has gotten so big, switching from side to side is like almost impossible now. And when I try and turn it over, sometimes it feels like she's on a nerve or something because it'll wake me up like out of my sleep because it's like a sharp shooting pain. So that's been really uncomfortable. But other than that, I'd say my sleep is pretty good still, and Baylee doesn't wake up till like 8 or 9 in the morning. So I'm really grateful for that, and that I get to sleep in that late still. I had my 36-week checkup yesterday, and she is officially head down. I'm so excited. We did an ultrasound to confirm it. So I had a feeling she was head down, but it's nice to know for sure. And I also did my group B strep test to test for that. So I will find out at my next and last appointment with my midwife to see if I am positive for that. And my belly is now measuring right at 36 weeks, so I'm not measuring a week behind anymore because she's more up and down now versus curled up on my right side. So that's good news. And we are about 90% sure about what our induction date is going to be. She gave me 2 options, and I'm just trying to discuss it with Adam to see which date fits best with his work schedule. So we are officially about 3 weeks away from meeting this girl, and I am so anxious. Her car seat was installed last night. Adam and I did that after dinner, and all of her like swings and stuff have been washed. I'm still waiting on a couple things in the mail for her nursery. They should be arriving by the end of this week, I think either today or tomorrow, hopefully. And then I will be filming the nursery tour for you guys as soon as that gets here. So I'm sorry it's taken me a little bit longer than I expected. Thank you guys for being patient. I know you guys are eager to see it, but I am a perfectionist, so I want to make sure that it's perfect. I'm not putting up a video that I'm not proud of. So thank you guys for being patient. I promise I will have it up soon. But other than that, there was one other thing that I was going to mention, but I totally forgot what I was going to say. Oh, I blew up my yoga ball last night to start bouncing on that at night to try and prepare my cervix for labor. I remember bouncing on the ball with Baylee like constantly, like the last 3 weeks until I had her, and I don't think it really did anything, but I don't think I'm gonna be going into labor before my induction date, but you never know. But I think that's it for the symptoms and this update. Again, it was mostly just me feeling really awful this week. Hopefully I'm in the clear with that, but I will show you guys my 35-week bump. So she's more up and down, so my belly looks more symmetrical now. It is from the side. And the other side. 3 more weeks. So that is everything for my 35-week pregnancy update. Thank you guys so much for watching and following along on my journey with me. Be sure to give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.